Welcome to Kettlebell Corner, where strength meets theory, where we take a deeper dive into all things kettlebells. I'm Jeremiah Waylon, and he's Roger Parks. And today, let's talk about a quick start kettlebell guide. What does that even mean? Well, we're going to cover picking the right bell, or two, maybe, which exercises, probably five, programming, training, setting up your week, and some intangibles. Roger, how you doing?
I'm intangible.
You sure are intangible, and I'm an isosceles. All right, so that's enough geometry for today. Roger, let's get it. You said you wanted to do a quick start kettlebell guide, and you mentioned that somewhere in the internet, you're going to get the deep dive, but it's always good to have that little first. And oftentimes, I actually get started with just the first quick start and never get into the instruction booklet. And then you sort of figure yourself out from there, how you use the tool. And today's tool is kettlebell. So let's start. Would you agree?
Agree with what?
Everything I say.
Usually, except for not this time.
Okay, good. Well, let's start with picking the right bell.
Okay, let's start with picking the right bell. We've got standard recommendations. Are the standard recommendations any good? I don't know. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. They're starting points. They're reasonable. Let's use, what are the standard recommendations? Don't they usually recommend like 16 or 20 for men and then 12 for women, something like that?
Yeah, I don't know what they use, but I will tell you
Whoa, what do you mean they?
all of them.
Okay.
I will tell you that when I have people start, it really just depends. Like if it's somebody, let's just take a male for example, and he's never done kettlebells before. It's been a minute since he's weight trained, but he's been an athlete in the past. I will recommend something like a 16 so that you can at least begin to learn some intricacies. But I will also suggest a 24 and probably a 20. Inevitably, in this particular case, it took about 3 weeks before I was like, yeah, you should get a 20 because you can't quite press that 24, and the 16, you're getting through these ladders fairly well. So I would say 16, 20, 24 is a good starting place for a generally, I guess, a general male, I guess. I don't know. It
And
depends.
that's all adorable, and that's on the internet, other places, and I don't really care about that, to be honest.
Well,
What
you asked me.
you gave me a lengthier answer than I wanted.
Well, too
Why?
bad.
This is why we're talking about this. Why we're talking about this is you have a place to start, but you almost inevitably always surpass that place quickly. Kettlebells are just, they're a strange thing to people in most cases. The weight distribution is different. The amount of load that they're used to using, let's say with a dumbbell or a barbell, the overhead press is a fantastic example. I've seen some very strong people overhead not be able to put a bell up of the equivalent mass. So, they're new tools and they take some getting used to. But once you start getting used to these tools and actually applying strength. One thing that kettlebells don't get enough credit for is the nature of the tool means that we have to teach you how to be strong. And I've been coaching and training for a lot of years, and in no other modality except for things like barbell and Olympic training, you don't get that with like your regular gym exercises. Okay, you have to be taught how to be strong because there's a margin of error, there's some risk there. And once you teach people how to be strong, which can go pretty quickly, they have to get heavier bells very quickly, not because their tissues have necessarily changed their tolerance substantially. It's because they're more coordinated, their brains are better, and they know how to get stronger. So I think the important thing with choosing the right load, anytime you can go to a gym or a place, at least initially before you buy some bells, 16 or a 12 are going to be fine places to start for most people. But just know that you're going to have to buy more. But for that second bell, if you can go and try some out in a gym, do so because you're going to get strong very quickly, and you're going to find that you're not going to have a huge use for a lot of these other bells right away. So the thing I want to call out is you're going to get stronger fast, and don't just stick with one belt because you have it. The conventional wisdom says, don't move don't move forward. And we say this all the time. Don't move forward before you need to. Minimum effective dose is fantastic. But if you're so underloaded that you're not getting enough stimulus to change, then that's a problem. Another problem with kettlebells is you often feel technique improve faster when you've got a bigger bell. It's a very, very common thing. And if you've ever coached kettlebells, you've seen it maybe hundreds of times where you give someone a better bell, and at very least, if they don't improve, they realize something new. They get a different sense of it. So you don't want to underload in this case, not when you're beginning, not when you're trying to figure it out. Now, you do have to wait for your tissue to adapt. So if you're untrained, then don't go right into, oh, well, I can, I got a 16, but I can probably handle a 20 or a 24. If you're sedentary and you just haven't done anything in years and years, then stick with the 16 for a little while, just because you need some tissue tolerance, or at least do some other activity. But you do want to consider the weight. You want to consider the bell size when you get one that you are going to go up pretty quickly, and that often heavier in the beginning is better than underweighted.
Yeah, so essentially get a few bells. So if you're going to do kettlebells, be okay with doing kettlebells, committing to having a few bells. You won't regret it. You only got to buy them once. They last for pretty much forever if you get a quality one. And for sure, you will notice some things like maybe that you actually should be using those legs a little bit more in your swing or whatever it is by using those heavier bells. Now you've got your bells, you've got your little bit of space. It doesn't take up a lot. You can do it in your house. You can do it on your back porch. You can do it wherever. It's the great thing about it is you don't have to go anywhere to do it, which is why you're at kettlebells in the first place. What exercises do I need to do? Okay, so this is a question everybody has, and you made this comment, Roger, and I love this. Don't be an exercise hoarder. I, for one, sometimes get caught up in that because you think I'm going to do this, but inevitably I always end up going back to the basics. And now what we're going to share is 5 exercises that we think are going to be the best one. There will be some people that debate a couple we leave off the list, but we don't give a shit. All right. So our 5 are the press, the squat, the swing, the clean, and the row. What?
Uh-oh. What?
The row?
Kettlebells.
But what about the snatch? And what about the dead up? The get up. The
Oh,
dead
the
up.
dead up. That's for the zombies.
Hey, that's new. So Roger, let's talk a little bit about why we chose those as our 5 so people can feel confident taking the time to learn those. Let's start with whatever you want. Press.
Sure. Well, we'll start with the press. Press, I think, is for me, I'm looking at two things when I'm working on, talking about exercise or talking about training, whatever it is, two different things, but you can do both with kettlebells. So when you have your press, you're going to learn some lessons. You're going to learn how to get tight. You're going to learn how to uh, really have a better relationship with the floor. I know that sounds kind of silly, but when you get advanced in
Yeah.
pressing, you need to understand that every little bit of space between the floor and the bell is important to getting overhead. So really big movement lessons. The cool thing about a press, specifically with the kettlebell, is that the center of the bell is actually going to be behind you. So there's going to be a novel stimulus there. So I think there is an advantage to a kettlebell press that you don't find with other modalities, even with barbells. People will talk about doing, let's say behind the neck press with a barbell in order to get the bar a little more in line with, let's say, the mid delt. Okay, cool. But with a kettlebell press, you don't need to do that. So you've got a novel stimulus, and really you're looking to get something physical out of this. So I want people to get trained right away. I want them to, I don't want to say, hey, we're going to learn kettlebells for a year and then I'm going to teach you how to get strong with them. I want you to learn right away. I want you, within a couple weeks to feel like your body feels better. You're stronger already. And the cool thing about this modality is people will often criticize it because of the learning curve. Yeah, there's a learning curve. And if you're teaching someone to snatch in this first block of learning, then yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot to do. But why don't I just take these other moves? And the press is one of them. Why don't I just take these other moves and teach you some lessons? So the press is one of those great movements that you can incorporate into learning the snatch that is relevant for that. You're going to learn some other movement lessons. It tends to be really good for the shoulders. People get a different
Yeah.
sense of their whole upper extremity, how the shoulder blades move because the bell moves behind you. So a press is definitely one of my big go-tos. If I'm even picking just three, it's a press. Press is definitely on that list.
Yeah, and if you listen to episode 5, I think you'll find Roger's clean and press challenges like 4,000 a day. But that's a little more advanced, you know. All right, let's take the squat. So subsequently, I guess that would be the opposite of the press, where you're using your lower body instead of your upper body.
Yeah, I guess kind of.
Maybe.
Similar in a lot of ways. You're learning some important lessons. You know, you're learning how to move ideally through the knees, the hips, the ankles, as opposed to the spine. Okay, you're building some muscle mass there. Now, kettlebell squat in many cases is not going to be the same kind of overload you're going to get with, let's say, a barbell, for example. However, they are going to be front loaded. So in short order, when you're doing things like, let's say, a rack squat, you know, where you have, let's say you're holding the bell in your rack on your right side, you not only have front loaded, but you have offset loading, or you have one-sided loading. And that makes things a bit more of a challenge. So you're not going to get the same physical result right away, but you are going to get a challenge that's a little different in terms of, where the loading is. And I've seen some really, really strong people, you know, doing let's say a front squat with just like a 40-kilo bell, you know, relative to the weights that they can move, like, oh, this is nothing, but like, I really feel like this challenges me and get some good stuff locked in. So there's a physical challenge there. I do think that learning how to squat is an important skill, period, because you do use it in many cases in your daily life. And it's something that you can really translate into other movements. Your ballistic lifts are going to all have a vertical element of them. That, you know, it is a ground reaction force. So squatting teaches you how to put force directly into the ground. So it's an important lesson to learn there as well. So you usually start with goblet squats, which are also therapeutic in that they can help you shift back a little bit. And there's a pretty cool mobility component to goblet squats as well.
Yeah, and we definitely, you know, make sure you can squat before we do this next exercise or skill, however you want to refer to it. It's the swing, right? It's the one. It's the one. Everybody's like, I got to do the swing. You know, 100 swings a day for a month. All this, blah blah blah. So, why did the swing make the list for our first 5? Somebody should learn when they're just getting in.
Because it's a great exercise. It's something unique to the kettlebell. You know, you see people swinging dumbbells, but that doesn't mean they should.
Yeah, yeah. You see people texting and driving too.
Yeah,
both are dumb.
Just because you can do it doesn't mean that you should.
Yeah,
but you know,
exactly.
the swing is unique to the kettlebell. You can't do swings the same way with other tools. So take advantage of that. They're a fantastic tool for conditioning. It's a great way to get some impact into your system without impact in a way.
Yeah, it's low impact, low impact plyometrics.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, there are going to be some substantial differences. You know, we've had conversations about this, some substantial differences between plyometrics and kettlebell swings, but it does seem that one offers some benefits of the other. So, you know, you can get some high intensity work for your heart. You do build some muscle. I know that's not supposed to happen, but it does.
What? What is this sorcery you speak of? Muscle building.
I know it's not supposed to happen. It's not supposed to be heavy enough, or you know, the rep range is all wrong. But I don't know anybody who hasn't done kettlebells for a period of time who hasn't had to buy new pants.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah, it's totally a thing. And you know, the cool thing about the swing, and this is just really relevant for me. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, very busy day. I didn't really have time to get a workout. I stubbed my toe really hard last week, and I'm pretty sure it broke. So it's a little weird, but it's starting to feel better, yada, yada, yada. Nobody cares about that.
Cares.
However, you should know that when I was like, well, I got to at least get 10,000 steps in, I walked down to the garage where I keep my kettlebells, and the process of gaining these 10,000 steps for no reason other than I'm a stepaholic, I guess. But I just grabbed my kettlebell and I swang it, you know, 50 times. I was like, all right, 50 times, 25 straight, took a break, another 25 straight. Was it like the most intense ever? No, but I will tell you, my booty was lit like a torch, Roger.
Okay.
Okay, get those evil thoughts out of your mind.
Um,
Uh,
to
so it's applicable.
to get past your stepaholic program or problem, do you need a 12-step program?
Okay, all right. If I had a cricket sound effect, I'd play it. No. All right.
I'll
So
leave the dad
enough of
jokes to you.
yes, you should. Enough of that nonsense. The next one we have is the clean. All right,
Okay.
probably one of my favorite. If I never feel like doing kettlebells, grabbing a couple of 20s, 24s, and doing some double kettlebell cleans will almost always get me ready to exercise and feeling good about life. Now, the clean is like the gateway drug, right? The gateway drug to that cool snatch that you want to do, the gateway to get into a great press and these sort of things. Roger, why we have the clean in our first five?
Well, I think, Amy, you just named two big reasons. One,
Yes.
you learn some lessons that you do bring into the snatch. There's a great linkage between the upper body and the lower body, and the clean teaches this lesson better than the swing does. The the clean doesn't just, it does get things in position as well, but it's still a fantastic movement in its own right, especially when you double up. I love double bells. If I were to pick, if I were to pick my favorite kettlebell exercise, it's going to be between the press and double bell cleans. And
Nice.
as I've said before, I can do just those things and I can feel fantastic. You're not going to get a crazy overloaded sensation on your legs like you would with, let's say, swings or with squats. But I do find just my overall strength. I just feel stronger and just better put together when I use these. So even if for no other reason, then you're going to use the clean a lot. You better get good at it. Just as a personal aside, I think Jeremiah can attest to this. Me probably more than him, but our cleans were not good for a long time, and we were not focused on them like we should have been. And training for certifications, elbows get banged up, wrists get banged up. It's like this does not feel good. And my cleans didn't feel solid for quite some time. I do think it's one of the hardest exercises, the hardest skills to really get. But once you have it, it really is fantastic, especially when you're looking to, believe it or not, do things like a half body weight press. One of the things that was really helpful for me was cleaning bells that were much bigger, because getting something into the rack position and then holding it and then feeling the connection between the ground and the rack was really helpful for me. So it brought my strength way up.
Yeah, the clean is, as we've evolved as coaches, it's one of the things where I tell my students and clients, or whatever you want to call it, I tell them one thing I want when people see your skills is have a good clean. The rest will work itself out. But I like to represent the way we teach kettlebells, the principles we use, really translate and show their proof in a clean, in a good clean. And like Roger said, it was a struggle for a while, but then when you do go to these certs and somebody's like, "Oh, that's a beautiful clean," you're like, "Damn right, that's a beautiful clean." You know what I mean? And like, chances are my snatch is going to be pretty good, and the rest of it will all be there. But it's I don't think we can gush on the clean enough, Roger. So let's
Hold on,
let's
I
move
do.
on.
No, let's not move
Okay,
on. Hold on.
okay, okay.
There's something
Let's
that I
talk.
want to point out, and that's when I teach these things. Cleans are really hard to get, and there are plenty of ways to either do a vertical clean or do we call it a two-hand clean. People usually call it a cheat clean. There are ways to get the bell in position, and I don't want people left with the idea that this is a prerequisite step. That if you're picking skills to work on, these are the ones that we would work on. But we're not saying you have to learn how to clean before you can do anything else, because I often don't really worry about people's cleans for maybe a couple weeks. I let them get some confidence, let them feel better, and then you can start giving them these cues, because they can get to be kind of complex. And until you've really versed yourself in the way kettlebells feel and they move, until you've internalized some of these concepts, it can be a difficult skill. And you can teach it quickly, but you can't teach it, in my experience, as quickly as you can a squat or a press. So
Yeah, or even
I
the swing, to be
yeah.
honest.
So I like to save that for later. I mean, there are people who I've taught to swing, and I don't teach them how to hike for 2 months, because I don't care if they know how to hike.
Yeah.
They're getting the stimulus and they're feeling better. And it's like, oh, by the time you're confident with your swing, then it's like, all right, you want to learn the hike? Yeah, cool. Then it takes 2 minutes, as opposed to teaching people how to swing from a hike, and they get injured, things get butchered, blah blah blah. So you don't necessarily need to learn these skills from start to finish before you move on. These are just the ones that I think are the best, and you should focus on them, but not to the exclusion of doing anything where you're just spending an hour, learning your cleans. Like, all right, well, maybe next week I'll be able to do a squat.
Maybe I'll be able to press. Well, that's exactly right, Roger. And that's a really good point, in the sense that it is weird to hold a kettlebell in a rack position and then move it, whether you're just holding it for a squat or you're trying to press it overhead. That's a weird position for people. Often your forearms are going to feel a little angry at like what you're doing to them because you're just putting this weight on there. And look, if that's a limiting factor, I just get those little wrist guards and just like wear the wrist guard until it's not an issue, or forever. I don't care, you know. So that's a good point. And now the row, Roger, the silly old row, good old row, you know, row.
So this one is not generally considered a kettlebell skill, which is fine. I don't care whether it is or it isn't. I'm not even interested in
Okay,
having
who's
the
making this
conversation.
stuff up anyways?
You
Seriously.
you have a kettlebell in your hand, use it. Whether you're doing, I really like to do a 2-arm kettlebell row where you put the bell in between your feet, you get down into the position of your back swing, like you would do a swing. In both thumbs are down, and then you grab the handle, or basically you grab the horns on either side, and you're pulling the bell up to your belly. That's one of my favorites because you're working your back, you're teaching the lats how to do their job. You're finding sensation and linking that sensation in your back to your legs. You're also drilling the position of your backswing. You're getting really, really comfortable down there. So you're really focused on getting some stimulus there and feeling the feet pushing away from the floor. And as you progress, and let's say you're moving from a 2-arm swing to a 1-arm swing, you can start doing things like a split row. Then you can work on shifting weight from one side to the other. So, is it unique to kettlebells? No, not necessarily, but I think it's a useful skill. It'll take, you know, it'll teach you some important lessons. This whole idea of neutral spine, of using your legs, of maintaining position. I think it's very low barrier to entry. So if I'm just picking something right away, that's something that almost everybody has the ability to pick up pretty quickly. And when you're using a kettlebell, you're not going crazy heavy. So you're learning some good positions, you're getting some fitness in, and I would throw that in.
Yeah, I mean, who'd have thought the row so powerful and so useful yet so rudimentary? All right, so why did we leave out the get up, Roger? Everybody's going to be like, well, simple and sinister swings and get ups. That's all you need. What do you think about this voice I'm using? But why did we leave out the get up?
Just because
Is there
it's a
any
lot.
benefit to doing it?
Sure. I mean, look, I've made my confessions. It's not my favorite skill, but I think it's a good skill. I think it's useful for a variety of reasons, but it doesn't build a ton of direct fitness. It can be useful, but it's not something that, people are necessarily going to notice right away. You're not going to get them, a lot of the time when you're teaching, you're learning, you want something that's going to really encourage you to keep going. And you're going to get more out of a squat than you are a get up.
Yeah.
I think it just is what it is. Some cases maybe you won't, that's fine, but in most cases you will. So the get up is a cool skill. You can build it. You can build it into your warm up. You can say, okay, as part of my warm up, I'm going to do the quarter get up. And every time, you have a warm up, you just throw that in there. Now, if you want to learn to get up, not saying don't do it, but I think the other ones are going to be more helpful for you, and you can learn the get up in time, and you can decide how useful it is for you. So,
Yeah.
learn up to, learn a quarter at a time, learn an eighth, learn 1/62. I don't care what percentage of the getup you want to learn, throw it into your warm up and let that build. But again, this is the quick start guide. We're not going and we're not getting coached 4 times a week by, professional
Us.
kettlebell coaches.
Yes.
We're not doing that. You're grabbing the couple bells you have, and then you're going, and you want to see some results right away. So that's one of the reasons why the get up didn't make the list. And as far as the snatch, It's just a lot.
Yeah, you'll get there. Don't worry. This is like Roger says, the quick start guide.
Yeah.
And I love what you said. These five that we gave you, you're going to get something out of them right away. There's
Mhm.
a relatively low barrier to entry. A few things you'll have to learn, and you'll pick that up. If you found us and you learn it, and you're listening to this, then you certainly will know we have tons of resources on how to do each of these. So you're just going to learn by doing, essentially. That's
I don't
like
know
a
that we've
real.
done. I mean, I know we filmed a row, but we could do one on a row in the different positions. Maybe we
Yeah,
should do that. But
I like
anyway,
that.
you
Yeah,
know,
we got that. Zero to swing. We got that.
and look, if the snatch is something that you really really want to learn, then that's fine. But in order to do it, you're going to have to get some lessons from the squat, from the swing, from the press, and from the clean.
Yeah.
So,
There it is. You're gonna have to do all those before you can even do the snatch, anyways. And then
well,
even when you do the snatch,
I,
well,
I I
maybe not
wouldn't say
necessarily.
you have to. You probably
It's a
can
good
learn it
idea.
in its own thing. But
Yeah,
again, when you're looking at natural progression, you're looking at ease. This is our rationale. Feel free to agree or disagree, but this is why we did what we did.
yeah. I will say most of the time, if I'm getting somebody to snatch, I'll have done all these things prior to, and then I don't have to bang my head against the wall, and they don't have to suffer trying to figure it out as much.
Yep.
And then you can get into details quicker. All
Yep.
right, so we've got the exercises, Roger. Now, what about the programming, the training? How are we getting through this? We've talked about this before. It's the 1-5-1 method.
Hmm.
You can we you did mention some layers to this as using it in isolation or as a workout, but the one is single reps, the five is like a ladder 1 to 5
Hmm.
or 5 to 1, and then
Whatever your ladder is.
yeah, whatever, it's a ladder, and
Mhm.
then the final one is when you're getting more into EMOM sort of things or higher
Using
rep
time
volume.
as a
Time
controlling
is a
variable.
variable. Yeah, exactly. So when we talk about using the 1-5-1, how can you, in the frame of this quick start guide, get people going now that they've got their weight, they've got their bells, they've got their exercises? Let's go. What are we doing?
So I'm presupposing multiple bells. Let's say you're at a gym and you actually are lucky enough to have a good gym with a solid rack of bells. So the first one is obviously for the single rep. You use single reps when you're interrogating your maximum weight that you can use, or when you're really working on your form, your technique. So, especially in the beginning in this context, you're going to go up some bell sizes pretty quickly. So let's say you have decided to do a ladder with your presses. Let's say you think you can bang out two 1 to 5 ladders with a 16. Okay. Well, how about before that you do some single reps with an 18 or with a 20? How about you try that? Let's see how those feel. Obviously, assuming a solid warm up. Maybe you can, maybe you can't, and maybe you can get some single reps there, but you're not gonna work on that. You're not gonna use that bell for any kind of volume because again, this is you're brand new to this stuff. You don't know how strong you are. So should you go and pick the biggest bell you can and try and do single reps? No. But you should at least push against a couple of them and see how it feels. So if you've gotten to the point where, no injuries and the 18 or the 16 feels comfortable to handle, try the 18 for a rep. You might find that within a week or two, that 16 is like, okay, I've got to use a 20. And this is very very common. So in this context, you can start with the single reps. If you want to squat and you feel like you can handle a little bit heavier load, especially with a goblet squat, you can do some single reps there. You can do a single rep and then put that bell down and then go right into another set. But start to push the intensity a little bit in the beginning. I generally don't recommend you do this as an intermediate or an advanced lifter. Then you're going to use the one really to start going up in bells, your bell size, and like, okay, I'm trying to put some, I'm trying to add mass to what I can lift. That's a different scenario. But in this one, feel free to do some single reps as long as you're staying safe. And then again, then you're going into your ladder training, and it doesn't need to be 1 to 5. It can be 1 to 3. It can be, and any number you want. But the idea is you're going to go up to a top set, a top number, and then you're going to back down. That way, rather than, you're going to get less sore that way. You're going to get more lifts in, and you're not going to do a ton of volume because the volume often will get you sore. So you're getting stimulus without soreness, and this is really effective for new kettlebellers. So That's how you could
Yeah,
easily
and when
five.
you're not sore, you're going to show up the next day, and you're going to be able to continue on like a good consistent pace.
Sure. And in the beginning, a lot of the gains you're going to make are they're going to be neurological anyway. So you want that learning to happen as quickly as possible. And then as far as the minute goes, are you ready to use that? Yeah, you can. I mean, anytime you're looking to do any sort of conditioning, the minute is a perfectly logical unit to use. And what you'll do is you'll pull out you're gonna say the Bells app. So let's just
Brought to you by the Bells app.
I'll save
Download
you
it
the
now in the
trouble.
Apple App Store.
So you're gonna pull out the app and you're gonna do your EMOM, whatever it happens to be. One of my favorite things I like to do is I like to do 5 minutes. Even if I'm gonna do more, like I'll do several EMOMs throughout a workout, and I'll say, all right, well let's see how 5 swings every minute on the minute feels. And then I'm gonna gauge, and then as I get more proficient, then I could just add reps. So those are some really easy ways. The idea of the last one, okay, is you don't just go right to 10 swings a minute or 20 swings a minute every minute on the minute. Like, oh, I do it for 5 minutes, I've got my 100 swings. Yeah, but again, context. This is a quick start guide, so you're just starting off. Try five, see how it feels. Go up from there.
Yeah, and that kind of segues into like utilizing the right rest. So if this one is like a time variable, we had talked when we were discussing this episode about timeless, and I really like that idea of timeless and just like, all right, figuring out how to move. One of the things with the ladder that you'll come across is how long should you rest between rungs? Well, how long should you rest between this or between that? What kind of advice do you have for new kettlebellers in that regard, Roger?
Well, this is general fitness advice, and I've done this a long time,
You could tell he's bald.
and
He had hair when he started.
I did. I've done it a long time, and one of the biggest issues I see with programs following directives from other people who don't know you is the reps and the rest. Is in spite of their best intentions, it's really hard to write a program for someone who's not in front of you. And ideally you're throwing out recommended or customary recommendations, and you're counting on people to, rest longer as needed. Well, what I'm saying is rather than going into it saying, oh, well, I'm gonna, if you're looking for a number, rest 90 seconds. No, don't rest 90 seconds. What I would recommend that you do is, let's say we go back to five. So we're in our ladder training. When do I begin the next rung? I don't know. How hard was your last one? If one felt easy and it went right up, cool. Go into it, shake it off, go back into it after a few seconds. You don't need to wait long. But let's say you get to three, right? And three, you're struggling a bit. Go to your stopwatch and just kind of mash start and see what happens. How long do you need to rest, and start doing that for the duration of the workout. Once you start to get a little bit tired, and see how long it takes. Like, how long do you actually feel? How long does it take for you to feel recovered? Now, people new to exercise are not very good at knowing when they're ready to go, and sometimes when you do have a rest, it can kind of push you further along. But again, this is not where they are. When you're brand new, see how long it feels like, it feels until you're ready to go. And let's say it's 2 minutes, then make that your rest period. And then you can start to monitor that and say, oh, well, 2 minutes is what's right for me. And then maybe within, next week, let's try a minute and 45 seconds. Oh, I can do that. So you're slowly, you have some information, and now you have a variable that you can manipulate. Now you can start to decrease your rest. You can keep all things the same, decrease your rest, and you have another way to get better.
Yeah,
So,
it's very intuitive, right?
well,
You
it
can like
is, and
learn yourself.
yeah, rather than just trying to push into some sort of artificial recommendation that may not work for you, figure out where you are and then work from that point, rather than trying to go and follow some prescribed rest method. The I was talking to someone the other day about the rep max charts, and for me in particular, I don't remember. I wish I remember what the numbers were off the top of my head, but when I look at a 1 rep max, a 5 rep max, and a 10 rep max, my lifts were just way off, and it varied based on lifts. And I'm not a very high endurance lifter, except for with pressing. So, when you're looking at the point of that is that what I can press one time versus 5 times versus 10 times is very different. And it seems to be, that seems to even go along with how you train. As back in the days when I used to do, 10 was the magic number, so I did 10 of everything. Then it wasn't hard to
Yeah.
go to 10. Now that I switched to kettlebells, we don't usually go above 5. It's like I got to do 10. That's crazy.
I'll be here forever.
So the idea of your current endurance level is going to be a factor. So you need to think about that when you're resting.
All right. It's like you can naturally progress with these sort of parameters, these sort of things.
Sure.
And, you know, you'll sort of learn when to push or when you need to just kind of back off and take your time. And don't worry, there's nobody to judge you for this. This is your journey. I love saying that. Just kidding. It's very overused, but
It's
it
true.
really is it's your time to learn something new, develop these skills, do basic shit and get better. Right, Roger?
Well,
That's the name of the game.
stop asking other people to take responsibility for yourself. Stop
Okay.
asking for a very specific number because you're going to come across a couple scenarios. Either you're going to get a specific number and you're getting some jackhole who's either lying or wrong. You're going to get an idiot like me who's going to say it depends and say, I can only let you know if I figure out your whole context, or you're going to get I don't know. So
Yeah.
you're better off trying to figure out at least some context. That way, when you ask someone like me a question, I can give you a better answer rather than just, how many should I do? I don't know. I don't know you.
Yeah, like I can do 5 with this, and I really want to be able to do 6. So, what should be the strategy to get there is going to get you a lot farther than how many reps should I do before I can move up?
Sure.
Well, yeah, I guess one maybe. It
Or
could be
my
one.
favorite, my favorite question of all time. What's the best kettlebell? Like, huh? Like, are you
Well,
asking me
the
like
one that you have, I suppose, is the
the
best one.
the best brand? Well, I don't know. Like, well, the best weight? No, no, I don't know. What's the best kettlebell? Are you talking about an exercise? Anyway,
Yeah,
that this conversation went on because I didn't get tired of it. I enjoyed
you
asking, what do you
kept.
mean multiple times?
Why?
Before
Why?
before we get too far afield, though, the idea of timeless is kind of important too. If you're working, you're going back to ballistics, for example. You can go after that mythological 100 swings. So rather than oh, I heard 100 swings in 5 minutes. That's my goal. Well, or maybe your goal should just be 100 swings. And
Yeah.
Brett Jones talks a lot about the timeless method. That's where I heard it. I'm sure he heard it from somewhere else. Um, but he's the one that brought it to my attention. When you do timeless, you set a timer and you do all the reps that you want to do, and then you see how long it took you. You rest as needed, and it's easy to get wrong because a lot of people rest as needed is not rest as wanted. Okay, because I'll find myself sitting down like I will easily rested 5 minutes between between these chunks. So I'm not really dialed in this training session. But you rest only as long as you need, and then you see how long it takes, and then maybe it takes you 12 minutes, right? And then it
Yeah.
takes you 10, blah blah blah. Your goal is to push until you can hit your objective with a given bell. Pretty
Again, it's
easy.
that natural projection, that real intuition, that
Mhm.
just become one with the bell, right?
Or
It's
just
it's your only way.
or just pay attention a little bit and use a
Yeah.
stopwatch.
And as far as like a weekly schedule, and then we probably got to cut this out, but like you could do something. I think you mentioned like a grind ballistic break, or you can do every other day or something like that. It really is kind of like having fun with it or kind of feeling things out. Especially if you're new, you're going to see a lot of progress probably early on, and then
Yeah.
you have to figure it out from there.
You will. You'll see, figure this out until it stops working. But I mean, with these recommendations, you easily have a year's worth of training. And I'm being serious. You have the ability to do this, stay mildly tuned into your own training, and you easily have a year. Should you see a coach if you're having technique issues? Absolutely. But if I have someone who doesn't have technique issues, then I'm more likely to, clean a few things up and say, go on your way. But when we're getting down to when we're getting down to actual programming, a great way to program this once you have all the lifts and all the technique is I like to do grind ballistic, rest. So grind lifts, your squats, your presses, your rows, and then the next day you can do your cleans and then your swings. And I mean, yes, in many cases you're going to be doing your ballistics on your grind days because you're using
Got
those
to
cleans
clean
in
it.
transition.
Yeah.
Um, this works for many people. Sometimes, what I'm looking to do is keep a steady stream of stimulus, keep you engaged in learning, which is why I'm having you do, a 4 days on and then a day off. Sometimes people will get a little bit sore, and if that's the case, then you can split up your grind lifts. Let's say, let's use the row as a supplement. Let's say you're not getting sore in any of those. That's fine. It's just a scenario to explain the idea. But let's say you're feeling sore on the shoulders and the legs. So let's say Monday is a grind day. You want to do a press day. So let's say your press is a little heavier. You're still working on your squat, but it's a supplement, meaning your volume's not going to be as high. So maybe you do a couple ladders of one, but you only do one ladder of the other. And then you got your ballistics the next day, right? And then you're going to go in and you're going to do your squats. You're going to flip it. You'll do your squats will be the higher rep. And then you'll do your presses as a supplement. Or alternatively, you can just you can do an upper body day. You can say, hey, let me do my presses and my rows one day, then let me do my grinds the next day, and then let me do a squat day. Whatever. Just play with it. But the idea of alternating between grinds and ballistics is very effective for newer trainees. And then, in all honesty, as you get more advanced, it's common to throw in some swings at the end of a workout, just to get that little conditioning component in there. But again, that's after you've earned these skills and you're pretty comfortable. You know your limits, when you're tired, all your stop signs, like, hey, I better stop doing this.
Yeah, you get a chance to be really creative with kettlebells, which is one of the reasons why I gravitated towards them and I like them so much because you could not know where the session's going to take you. Oh, this feels really good. I'm really going to hammer home a press day then, or I'm feeling these swings. I'm going to really swing it out today. It could go on and on forever. Just see what works for you. And like Roger said, this is like a year's worth of training right here in 45 minutes. Not a big deal, right? So if you're new, go back. If you didn't take notes, and maybe just write down a couple of things we said, or just listen to this every time you work out, because who doesn't want to have us jabbering in your ear while you train? I, for one, know I do. And anything else you got, Coach?
No, I think that's good. I mean, there really is. There's probably more here than most people realize.
Yeah. So take it as it comes. Take your time and stay strong, everybody.